Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to folks who are joining today from various parts of the world. I'm DJ, the head of marketing at Entytle. First off, thank you for joining us today. And now to introduce the speaker for the day, Lalit Bhatt. Lalit is a CTO at Entytle and has been at the forefront of designing both SaaS and AI-based applications in the industrial space for decades. He's one of those industry leaders who loves to get down into the trenches and has immense expertise in all things related to installed base. Lalit has a phenomenal grip on technology and its applications for machinery manufacturers. When he's not at work, you'll find him posting some really interesting stuff around AI on LinkedIn and a bunch of other platforms. So with that, let me hand it over to Lalit.
Thanks, DJ. Thanks for the introduction and welcome everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, for wherever part of the world you are. So today, what we are going to talk about is basically installed base. Installed base is one of the most important topics for industrial OEMs, and why installed base growth is essential. Because once someone has got a handle on their installed base, it means that they have a very good visibility in terms of their customer base. They have a very good visibility about their customers, what equipment they are having, and with that visibility comes the further insight in terms of who are at risk customers, who are at the risk of churning. And then then it's not just on the diagnostic side of the things, but even it has implications in terms of finding new opportunities, finding the upsell and cross sell opportunities. And the other advantage of having a very good handle over the installed base is that usually what I've seen is that in the industrial OEM industry, where a lot of the folks they are part of the company for many, many years and they carry a lot of information in their head. But what happens when they retire? And that's where the bigger problem starts happening, when all this fragmented information or lost information kind of situation arises. And then, of course, like as we all know, every one of us is struggling with the lack of resources. And that's where it becomes very important that there is a very institutionalized way in handling the installed base. And then I think nothing to say out in the installed base, you have like what we also called as the long tail, in terms of like a customer base. You have every information about customers sitting in your databases. It's a matter of harnessing them. But there is a problem. And what's the problem is the installed base information, and especially in the context of industrial OEMs, which are not like a year, 2 year, or 10 years old companies. Many of these companies, in fact, our customer base, we have seen companies like which are at least couple of decades old, if not even there are examples where centuries old. So what happens? The data is scattered all across. You have multiple systems, and just saying that ERP is actually underplaying that thing. We have seen situations like where there are 10 ERP systems in the organization, and how to deal with those situations. And then with that comes all this non-standardized thing. Everything is called everything all over the place. And then when someone has to take a piece of information or build a piece of picture, then they have to go to probably multiple systems, take the data all out from them, and then join it together in some way on spreadsheets usually. But what it does, it takes hours and days before a meaningful information is put in place. And I'm sure, I think many of you would be able to relate to this one. This is a typical situation, what is happening out there with the whole data landscape that is there. There are like silos and non-scalable integrations. There are non-scalable analyst and manual workflows. Doing anything is usually a very, very heavy lift. And by the time someone is able to make sense of data, so much time goes away that data becomes, or the whole insight becomes stale. So is there a way out? And that's what we will focus on this webinar today. What I'll try to do is that it'll take you through a set of steps, and then how that helps us in basically making sense of the complete installed base. So let's start with what we call the step one. And again, I think we all know that garbage in, garbage out. So what the most and the first important thing to do to make sense of the data is to unify the whole install base information. And how we can do that? We can do that usually by taking all the data pieces that we know that are sitting in different systems, and then take them through a cleaning and unifying exercise. it takes time, but it's worth the effort, because once you are able to build and piece together all those different data points, and then take them through this different steps and make sense of like what are the addresses, what are the orders, what are the equipments, what are the different contacts, and create a unified picture of the install base platform. This itself, the visibility that is created at the end of the day in itself helps in a big way in getting control of and getting sense of the installed base. And usually, like putting it in some sort of map now makes it further, I would say, actionable, but it also at the same time gives a much better insight about how the whole installed base is basically laid out across the world. And then, of course, like if there are, you can build filters on top of that one so that now you can start drill down them in multiple ways. But what is more important here is to understand is that bringing this all data together, unifying it in a meaningful way is one very first important step before we even try to do anything with this data pieces. And this exercise has to be done in such a way that it doesn't remain a one-off exercise, but you are able to do it on continuous basis, because it's like that the data doesn't, it's not like stops at a given point of time. There are always new transactions happening, new equipments being sold, old equipments being replaced, new parts being sold. So all these things should basically flow into the system in a very seamless way. That's how the data remains contextual, and that's how the data remains actionable. And also, for one of the things I've seen is also that like many times we talk about this data warehouses and where all the data is put together into data lakes. But if you're just putting the data into data lakes, still in their own silos, they are not going to help us in a very meaningful way. It's still like that you have brought all the data at one place, but still the data is not connected to each other. Till we don't create that connection, the unification of different data points, the the value that we derive from that installed base is not of that level that we can get if we unify it in the correct way. Okay, so now we have the install base in place. Now what to do next? So usually the first set of things that happens is that we start now classifying customers. We call it clustering, we call it segmentation. But essentially what we do is that we basically start clubbing them into different cohorts. And it's not one way of cohorting. Different business needs, different departments of the businesses might need it in different ways. So that kind of flexibility need to be built into the system, because you might need cohorts in terms of like, for example, the aftermarket spare parts. They wouldn't want to know that which group of spare parts is bought by which customer. That could be one kind of cohorting. The other kind of cohorting is could be in terms of frequency and consistency of the customer base. Which set of customers are more consistent? It could be on monetary values, who are high buying customers, who are our top 5 or 6, or let's say top 10% customer in terms of revenue. It could be in terms of volume. It could be in terms of geography. But again, I think the idea is that are we able to cohort the customer base in different meaningful ways so that we can use them to solve different workflows as part of our business. So that is what the classify customer would help us with. But I think the more interesting thing is now, because you have an installed base and so much visibility with that one, the most interesting thing that can happen with it is that now can you start figuring out the wallet share. So just to give an idea of, I'm sure I think most of you would be aware of this one, but what happens is that whenever an OEM sells an equipment, the equipment again would need parts, consumable services along the life of the that equipment. And then given let's say if $100 is being spent on that one, and if OEM is only able to get the share back, which is like say $30, it could be in terms of services, it could be in terms of consumables, it could be in terms of spare parts. But if a big chunk of that is going out to other competitors, of course, like no one would be able to get 100, but still, if we are seeing that a major chunk of that is going to come competitors or others, and which can potentially could have come back to OEMs, I think that's where a lot of wallet share leak is happening. And it's very important to figure that out. That's where the install base data starts helping out with looking into transaction history, looking into patterns. We can really figure out that where the gap is happening right now. And again, this could help in other use cases like slow moving and obsolete inventories and those kind of things. And also, one more important thing is that if you remain connected to your customer the day when they want to replace their equipment, you would be probably the first one who would get considered when they are looking for from home to buy the new equipment. And then again, it comes the cross sell and upsell opportunities. I'm sure everyone would have seen this McDonald examples where, or any burger chain examples where they would try to sell the meals, and then they would try to top it up with like bigger fries or bigger cokes. But yes, again, I think once with this all data in place, we can do different kind of analysis to figure out what are the cohort of parts, or what are the set of parts, what are the kits that go together, so that they can be given as a recommendation when the customer is coming for a part, or even if we predict uh, that there is a part need or there is a service need, can we also pitch in other set of parts or services as part of cross sell and upsell opportunities. So this is all fine, but the problem comes is that at the end of the day, we have to call someone. So who is the right guy to call into that one? And that's also become very interesting, because when we look into these all data points like transactions data, services data, tickets, and all those things, we also get a set of contexts that are part of that customer who would get surfaced as part of this data cleanup process. And then we can also figure out, like giving some weightage based on the nature of the customer, that who would be a better fit to call to. But effectively, it can help in creating a calling sequence in terms of like whom to call first and then whom to call next kind of thing. But yes, the picture is only complete when we know that, okay, we have the opportunity, but now who in that customer organization we should go and pitch, so that the probability or the propensity to convert that opportunity becomes very high. And that's where the right stakeholder values, finding the right stakeholders becomes very, very important. Now, a word of caution, like, again, I think it all looks good. It's possible. I think that's what Entytle does day in, day out. But it's also very important that before we jump into this whole exercise, we need to be very, very careful. These are not usually like, it involves a lot of data, sometimes millions of records that are sitting across your ERP, FSM, CRM systems. We have seen data that are sitting in mainframe systems, their data sitting in spreadsheets. So it has to be very careful and be very realistic about the whole process. And that's where we suggest always like do a crawl, walk, run kind of thing. So what you do is that first, once you have the data in place, try to understand the installed base, where the descriptive analytics comes into picture, cohorting in multiple ways so that you get a better grip of the things. Once that is in place, then look for predictive analytics. Okay, for example, like if the same behavior continues, what we can expect, which customer would place order at what point of time, what is the probability that they will buy it. And then this whole AI-based prescription can come into picture, which would basically figure out that, okay, I know that this customer is buying and the other customer is very similar to this customer, though they should be buying also at the same level. And there are multiple ways to apply those models so that we can surface of more prescriptive opportunities, and which can help in further revenue growth. So it's very important to remain realistic about the whole process, so that and it's very also important to get earlier wins in place. If they're smaller, just the visibility part of it can help in a big way in in understanding the whole installed base. Whenever a salesperson or a service person is going visiting a customer, just because they have now the whole history in front of them, the whole discussion becomes very meaningful, because now you have a complete insight that what is their patterns of usage, what kind of things they buy, and that's what they can use it to, not even buying newer services and parts and other things, but also engaging them with them in a much, much better way. And then that was step zero. I would say that even before that, it becomes very, very important that these things are not like just a tools or technology delivered initiatives. It also needs a buy-in across the organization. It also involves a pragmatic approach to look into all the existing processes and make sure that they all align together for the things to be successful. The tools, technologies are just one piece of the picture. Everything has to come together. The organization has to align themselves around these tools, technologies, and the insights that they are surfacing, so that they can be harnessed in a very, very meaningful wage. And that's where I think it becomes very important that that's why we call it like the step -1, that even if you thinking to start this journey, make sure that there is that alignment in place so that the maximum benefits can be reaped out from this whole exercise. So it's just a sneak peek. I think once you have all these things in place, you can then build uh, all workflows and better UIs and all those things on top of that data, so that that becomes available to the to your sales team or service team whenever they are on the ground, so that they have a much better insight in terms of how to serve the customer in a much better way. And that's where we have also like sort of suggest to look and do a self evaluation in terms of where you are in terms of maturity, in terms of your people and processes, in terms of technology and tools, in terms of the data maturity, how fragmented the data is, or where you are. And it's again like a journey. It's not like overnight things would change. It is a journey. It is a journey that needs to happen in all the dimensions, in terms of people and processes dimension, in terms of tools dimension, in terms of data maturity dimension. But once we reach to like level 3 or level 4, the kind of returns it can give and the kind of connectivity it gives to the customer, that helps fundamentally in helping the revenue growth of the organization. So yeah, I guess that's where I'll wrap it up. DJ, I'm not sure if there are any questions. I was not looking into that one. But yeah, if there anything, we can take that up. But yeah, I guess that's what sort of we wanted to cover in this webinar today.
Thanks, Lalit. I think that was phenomenal and quite interesting. So there were questions that came in. I see one which is okay, that's off to the races. This says, why do I need an install-based intelligence solution when I have Salesforce and ServiceMax? I believe they use Salesforce as a CRM and ServiceMax as their field service management solution, and trying to understand why there is a need for an intelligence solution.
So I think there are a couple of ways to look into that. One, Salesforce and ServiceMax are fundamentally your workflow systems. They don't carry their brain. They are fundamentally a management, data management system kind of the things. Where installed base intelligence system comes into play is that it would basically help you in harness all the existing data that is sitting in the organization, bring it in a way that it is actionable. You can run more set of analytics into that one. You can create more opportunities, and then you can feed your Salesforce or Service Max or other CRM, other workflow systems, so that so that they are more actionable. And this whole AI based prediction and all those things, that's what the installed base intelligence system would basically provide to these systems. So hopefully, I think DJ, that should I'm not sure if there are any follow-up question, but I would put it in fundamentally in that way, that there is a difference between what the intelligence system would provide is basically to provide the brain behind in what direction that what kind of initiatives needs to be taken when we are looking into increasing sales or service revenues.
Absolutely, Lalit, I think that makes the distinction quite clear. There's another one which is probably a lot more simpler. What's a timeline? What's the time required to execute? I think by timeline they mean what's the time required to execute a project of this size?
So I think it's there are again like not just the time part of it. There is also a need for a different kind of skill sets that would require to execute this one, because it would require very, very different and diverse kind of skill sets to put things in place. And the time is also a big function of the kind of data, kind of systems, kind of a different kind of systems, and the state of the organization. It is that, like for example, when we talked about that maturity diagram, it's also is a big function of where you are in this. And the more on the left side you are, it is going to take more time. But yes, it's not unusual that we have seen organizations struggling even with data cleanup for a year or so kind of thing. So yeah, it takes time, it takes a lot of effort, it also needs a lot of commitment. And yeah, I think that has to one has to be very, very clear of like. And then that's always like we always have this question like uh, how to fast forward it and how to make it easier. And that's what Entytle has been doing. We have helped our customers in terms of like making sure it's just because we have done it for many, many customers now. So we have sort of platform in place which helps out in doing all this process in a much faster way. But yes, if you want to do on your own, I would suggest that like just make sure that first the organization is aligned, you have a complete handle on your different data stores, and then you have right skill sets in place in terms of technologies. So you would need not only like software kind of skill sets, but also data scientists and those things to build the algorithms and everything. So
Perfect.
yeah, I guess DJ, probably that's not a straightforward answer, and it is again like a very very big function of where the organization is at that point of time.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Lalit. I think some of the best answers are it depends. It always depends on something, right? No two cases are the same. Okay. Let me check if there are any more questions that came in. Yeah, this one's about this is interesting. Um, the question specifies that apart from IT, who else do they need? And I think they're indicating that the IT person, I'm just paraphrasing, it's a paragraph, but I'm just summarizing it for you. They're indicating that the IT team may not know the ins and outs of data. So who else is required? Probably they're trying to understand the business aspect and the business involvement in something of this size and this this project in general.
Yeah, I'm not sure I got the question completely, but I'll try to answer that. So fundamentally, I think this is a business initiative more than, of course, like there is a big part that data comes into play, but putting just the data story together is just a small part of it. I think the more important thing is how to build analytics on top of that one, and that's where a lot of business insights and domain expertise need to go in to derive insights or derive those predictions or prescriptions so that they are meaningful in the business context. So again, it's not like uh, I would say that it's way beyond that. It's a much bigger spread in which the organization is to play and work it out to make it successful. But what we have seen is that it is usually very successful if it is business driven, because that's where the focus remains on the outcome and not the activities that need to be done to basically execute on that one.
Got it. Perfect. I think that was the last question that came in. So looks good. We probably wrapped it up 5 minutes uh,
Yep, I guess.
before the actual allocated hour. So thank you so much for your time today and laying this out in plain speak. And everyone who attended this, thank you so much for taking out the time in your afternoon, evening, or morning, depending on where you are, to uh, to listen to us. Please do look forward to the next event that's happening on March 6th. We are going to be talking about the nuts and bolts of install base data. We're bringing in one of our tech experts, data experts, to weigh in on what are the various strategies that you can deploy as far as data itself is concerned. And by the way, since you're on this page, this is you can try out our solution. This is a QR code. It's there on the website as well. You can register for a free trial of the product of the software or the intelligence platform. And also, if you have your phone, you can go ahead and scan this QR code, and you would be able to go ahead and fill out a form that will help with the registration for the free trial. You can give it a shot. All right. I think that's all we had for today, folks. Thank you once again, Lalit, and thanks everyone for taking the time out to
Thanks
it.
everyone.